History has its bizarre moments, full of twists, ironies, and oddities that could make even the most serious scholar do a double take. In the previous 2 parts of this series, we brought you 50 strange and surprising historical facts that highlight just how absurd humanity can be. Today, we're taking that number up to 75, with 25 more strange and random facts that'll leave you scratching your head. But before we dive in, a quick disclaimer. History, as it's written and passed down, is always subject to interpretation, and often the most absurd moments come from a lack of context. While we do our best to ensure accuracy, history can be tricky, and details might vary from one source to another. Fingers crossed that we've got it right. Remember, we're not professional historians, just enthusiasts who love exploring the quirks of the past. Some of these facts may seem perfectly rational with a bit more context, while others might appear even more ridiculous. Either way, we've gathered an array of jaw-dropping, unusual, sometimes hilarious, and occasionally shocking facts that reveal the depths of humanity's absurdity. So sit back and enjoy 25 absurd random history facts. Part 3. Number 1. The New England Courant and Mrs. Silence Dogood. In 1721, Boston saw the birth of one of America's first newspapers, the New England Courant, founded by James Franklin. Just a year later, the paper became the platform for a series of humorous letters written by Mrs. Silence Dogood, a supposed widow who poked fun at life in colonial America. These letters became so popular that some readers, none the wiser, wrote in to propose marriage to the clever Mrs. Dogood. The catch? She didn't exist. The letters were written by James's younger brother, 16-year-old Benjamin Franklin, who had been denied the chance to publish under his own name. Using the pseudonym, young Franklin gained both experience and notoriety, foreshadowing the fame he would later achieve. 2. Karlburg Special Brew. The famous Danish beer brand Carlsberg created its Special Brew in 1950 to honor British Prime Minister Sir Winston Churchill's visit to Copenhagen. As a tribute to Churchill's taste, this beer contains a hint of cognac, his favorite dinner drink. It's a strange cross-cultural honor, blending Denmark's famous beer craftsmanship with the image of Britain's most iconic cigar-smoking, cognac-sipping wartime leader. Churchill never lived to see the absurdity of a beer brewed in his honor, flavored after his dinner routine, but perhaps he would have appreciated the gesture. The potato advocate, Antoine-Augustin Parmentier. Antoine-Augustin Parmentier was a French pharmacist and nutritionist with a peculiar mission. While imprisoned by the Prussians during the 7 Years' War, he was forced to eat potatoes, then considered an unhealthy food linked to diseases like leprosy. At the time, potatoes were actually banned in France, but Parmentier returned home leprosy-free and convinced that potatoes were, in fact, nutritious. He spent the rest of his life championing the humble spud, writing books and even organizing lavish dinners featuring potatoes to change the French perception of the vegetable. Eventually, his efforts led to the lifting of the potato ban. Thanks to him, France embraced the potato, now a staple of French cuisine. The French name for potato, pomme de terre, apple of the earth, might be a phrase that even your French teacher drilled into your head back in school. 4. Britain's worldwide invasions. This one is truly absurd. It's quicker to list the nations Britain hasn't invaded than those it has. Out of the 193 United Nations member states, Britain has invaded 171 of them at some point in history. The British Empire was so widespread that it was said the sun never set on it. From Africa to Asia and the Americas to the Pacific Islands, Britain left its mark, whether through full-scale military campaigns or smaller, temporary occupations. Their penchant for global domination was unparalleled, leaving a legacy of colonialism and conflict that can still be felt today. 5. Robert Hansen, the spy who hunted himself. During the Cold War, the FBI grew suspicious that there was a Soviet mole within their ranks, passing intelligence to the KGB. They assigned Special Agent Robert Hansen to lead the investigation and uncover the spy. The twist: Hansen was the mole. For years, he led a double life, feeding information to the Soviets while simultaneously searching for himself. It wasn't until 2001 after a 22-year espionage career, that Hansen was finally caught and arrested. This case remains one of the most infamous examples of double-agent absurdity. 6. Naked, oiled, and athletic. The ancient Greek Olympics. The ancient Greeks took their sport seriously, so seriously, in fact, that their Olympic athletes competed in the nude, their bodies glistening with oil. This practice was seen as a tribute to the gods and a symbol of the athletes' purity and civilization. While it may seem bizarre to us today, the Greeks considered the naked human form the ultimate expression of physical perfection and athletic prowess. It wasn't just about competition, it was a spiritual and cultural statement. So, next time you're watching the Olympics, just imagine how different things might have been 2,000 years ago. The stigma of left-handedness. For much of history, left-handedness was considered unnatural, sinful, and even a mark of the devil. Up until the late 20th century, many societies forced left-handed children to write with their right hands, fearing that left-handedness was a sign of wickedness or bad luck. My great-grandfather, who lived well into the modern era, believed that being left-handed was a curse. Despite this stigma, today we know that left-handedness is simply a variation in human biology, and in many places, left-handed people no longer face the same level of prejudice. 8 inches. Rabbit is a forbidden word on Portland Isle. On the Isle of Portland in Dorset, England, the word rabbit is considered bad luck. This superstition is believed to date back to quarry workers who noticed that rabbits would often pop their heads up before dangerous rock falls. The association stuck, and to this day, some locals avoid using the word rabbit altogether. If you ever visit, be careful not to mention rabbits. You might get a few strange looks. And definitely avoid quoting Monty Python's killer rabbit skit while you're there. 9. Pharaoh Pepes II's honeycoated servants. Pharaoh Pepes II of Egypt is said to have had an unusual method for keeping insects away during outdoor meetings. He would order his servants to be stripped naked and covered in honey, so the bugs would be drawn to them instead of him. While it may sound absurd, this ancient strategy highlights the lengths to which royalty would go to ensure their comfort, even at the expense of their servants. The Roundhay Garden Scene, the world's oldest surviving film. At just over 2 seconds long, the Roundhay Garden Scene, filmed in 1888, holds the title of the world's oldest surviving motion picture. Filmed by French inventor Louis Le Prince in Leeds, England, it captures 4 people walking in a garden. Despite its brevity, this tiny piece of film marks the birth of cinema as we know it. Interestingly, Le Prince disappeared mysteriously in 1890, just before he was set to demonstrate his invention to the world. The mystery surrounding his vanishing adds yet another layer to this fascinating snippet of history. 11. Aeschylus, Death by Tortoise. Ancient Greek playwright Aeschylus, known for his tragedies, met a rather tragic and absurd end himself. According to legend, he was killed when an eagle mistook his bald head for a rock and dropped a tortoise on it, hoping to crack the shell open. While the story might sound too strange to be true, it's one of those historical anecdotes that has endured for centuries. Whether it's fact or fiction, it certainly adds an ironic twist to the life of one of history's great dramatists. 12. William Henry Harrison, the shortest U.S. presidency. William Henry Harrison holds the unfortunate title of the shortest-serving president in U.S. history. After delivering a marathon inauguration speech in freezing weather without wearing a coat, he caught a cold. The illness quickly developed into pneumonia, and just 1 month after taking office, he passed away. His presidency may have been brief, but his legacy endures as a cautionary tale about the importance of dressing warmly. The Great Molasses Flood of 1919. In January 1919, a massive storage tank containing 2.3 million gallons of molasses ruptured in Boston's North End, sending a wave of sticky syrup flooding through the streets at 35 miles per hour. The disaster killed 21 people, injured hundreds more, and left the city coated in molasses for weeks. Known as the Great Molasses Flood, this bizarre and tragic event remains one of the most unusual industrial accidents in American history. The CIA's Condom Plan. During the Cold War, the CIA developed countless schemes to undermine the Soviet Union, but one of the strangest involved condoms. The plan was to airdrop extra-large condoms marked medium over Eastern Bloc nations to demoralize their populations by implying that Americans were, well, significantly larger. The idea was ultimately scrapped, but it remains one of the more creative and absurd strategies considered by U.S. intelligence agencies during the Cold War. The first bomb dropped on Berlin. When the Allies launched their first air raid on Berlin during World War II, the bomb didn't hit a strategic military target. Instead, it struck the city zoo, killing the only elephant. This tragicomic incident set the tone for what would become a long and destructive bombing campaign against the German capital. 16. Rio de Janeiro, capital of Portugal. In an unprecedented moment in world history, Rio de Janeiro became the capital of Portugal from 1808 to 1821. This occurred when the Portuguese royal family fled to Brazil to escape Napoleon's invading forces. During this time, the royal court ruled the Portuguese Empire from the other side of the Atlantic. Imagine the absurdity of a European empire with a South American capital. 17. Wch the Soldier Bear. During World War II, Polish soldiers adopted a Syrian brown bear cub they named Wojtek. As the bear grew, he became a mascot for the Polish army, and when the troops were stationed in Italy, Wojtek was officially enlisted as a soldier. The bear was even promoted to the rank of corporal after helping carry ammunition during the Battle of Monte Cassino. Wojtek became a symbol of Polish resilience and camaraderie, and after the war, he lived out his days in a Scottish zoo, beloved by visitors. The idea of a bear enlisted as a soldier may seem absurd, but Wojtek's story is a testament to the bond between man and animal during times of hardship. 18. William the Conqueror's explosive funeral. When William the Conqueror, the first Norman king of England, died in 1087, his funeral became an unintended spectacle. His body, already decomposing, was stuffed into a stone sarcophagus that was too small. As the monks attempted to force the bloated corpse inside, it reportedly burst open, releasing a ghastly stench that filled the church. The chaotic scene left mourners reeling, turning the solemn occasion into an absurd and grotesque event. It's an ironic twist of fate for a man who had built an empire through conquest and intimidation. The unsinkable Violet Jessup. Violet Jessup earned her nickname as the Unsinkable Stewardess after surviving 3 major ship disasters, including the infamous sinking of the Titanic in 1912. Before that, she had been aboard the RMS Olympic when it collided with another ship, and later, she survived the sinking of the HMHS Britannic during World War I. Despite these brushes with death, Jessup continued to work on ships for years after. Her remarkable survival streak makes her story one of the most absurd and lucky tales of maritime history. 20. Fox tossing, a deadly sport. In the 17th and 18th centuries, bored European elites invented a cruel sport called fox tossing. The game involved tossing live foxes high into the air using large slings, with the winner being the person who could throw their fox the highest. While the foxes often didn't survive the experience, the sport became popular at courtly festivals, particularly in Germany. In an era before modern entertainment, the absurdity of fox tossing shows just how far people were willing to go for a bit of excitement. 21. Turkeys as parachutes. During the Spanish Civil War, military officials needed to airdrop supplies to troops but lacked parachutes. Their solution? Live turkeys. The turkeys were dropped along with the supplies, and their flapping wings slowed the descent, acting as makeshift parachutes. Unfortunately, while the supplies often made it safely to the ground, the turkeys didn't always survive the drop. This bizarre experiment in airborne logistics shows the creativity and absurdity of wartime problem-solving. 22. The defenestration of Prague. The defenestration of Prague is one of the most infamous and absurd events in European history. In 1618, a group of Bohemian Protestant nobles, angry at the Catholic Habsburg rulers, threw 2 Catholic officials out of a window at Prague Castle. Remarkably, the officials survived the 70-foot fall, landing in a pile of manure. This act of defenestration, literally throwing out of a window, sparked the 30 Years' War, one of the longest and most destructive conflicts in European history. It's hard to imagine a more absurd catalyst for a war than a literal toss out of a window. The sacred chickens of ancient Rome. The ancient Romans had a peculiar method of making important decisions, consulting the sacred chickens. These chickens were believed to have divine insight, and their eating habits were carefully observed by priests. If the chickens ate the food offered to them, it was considered a good omen. If they refused, the decision was seen as cursed. During a naval battle in the First Punic War, a Roman admiral, annoyed that the chickens wouldn't eat, threw them overboard, saying, "If they won't eat, let them drink." He promptly lost the battle, and the chickens' divine status was cemented. The man who sold the Eiffel Tower. Victor Lustig was one of history's greatest con artists, and in 1925, he pulled off one of his most audacious scams. He sold the Eiffel Tower. Lustig, posing as a government official, convinced a scrap metal dealer that the Eiffel Tower was going to be dismantled and that he could purchase the rights to the metal. After successfully pulling off the scam once, Lustig tried it again, but was caught before he could close the second deal. His ability to sell one of the world's most famous landmarks is a testament to his skill as a con man and the absurd gullibility of his victims. The Cobra Effect. In colonial India, the British government offered a bounty for every dead cobra in an effort to reduce the snake population. At first, the plan worked. Cobras were killed in large numbers. But soon, enterprising locals began breeding cobras to turn in for the bounty. When the government realized what was happening, they scrapped the program, but the breeders simply released their now worthless snakes into the wild. The result? An even larger cobra population than before. This unintended consequence became known as the Cobra Effect, and is now a classic example of how well-intentioned policies can backfire in absurd ways. Thank you for watching. We hope you enjoyed these absurd history facts. If you did, don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe to our channel and share it with your friends. And as always, let us know in the comments which fact blew your mind the most. Until next time, take care and stay curious.